people like Ben and Ben himself do so much harm to so many people, and that is by reinforcing that Christian thinly veiled purity shit.
Back at it again as the Photo Culture Podcast. I go by the name Exotic Rose, and I have my co-host Money Mitch. And today we have a special guest, Elle Stanger.
Thank you, Rose. Exotic Rose, Roosevelt. Mitch, nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. I want to say real quick to the audience that so I came on because I definitely want to talk about another guest episode that you had. So I will give everyone a little background about me. And I want to go down some notes I have and kind of deconstruct and rediscuss some of the things you guys brought up. But you know what? Otherwise, you are in charge. It's your show. So ask whatever you want. And I am so down.
All right, so let's start from where you from, where you was born.
So I was born in Kansas, and my parents lived there for 4 whole months before moving to California. So I'm a California dickhead. I'm one of those Californians that moved to Portland, Oregon. And if you don't get that joke, that's okay. A small percentage of your population gets that joke. My parents are still married. They've never been religious. I'm giving you all the demographics here. They were middle class. My dad worked in a science industry. My mom worked as a special aid teacher for special needs kids until last week. She retired after 30 years. My sister married her high school sweetheart and has 3 beautiful children under the age of 3. And I am the wild one that moved out of state and just dove headfirst into the sex industries in so many ways. So I live in Portland, Oregon now. I have been married twice to 2 different very nice men. One of them still does my hair, Isaiah Mark, shout out. The other one is an excellent co-parent to our child, who is 8. She's a really funny, nerdy, fucking enormous child, by the way. I carried like a 9.5-pound baby, and I'm like 5'2". So I like wrestle my child, and that's a whole other thing. Like we could talk body issue because it's an interesting conversation raising my child who's gonna be a big girl about fat phobia, and then like starting to recognize that shit in myself, how it comes up. So I am definitely a byproduct of a white middle-class American, ignorant sometimes family, and I've had to unlearn a lot of toxic shit. So the reason I'm here today is because that started when I was a kid, and I was a chronic masturbator. I'm going to tell you, I was in preschool, in kindergarten, and this is awkward for people because kids and sex, it's like, that's weird. We don't know how to talk about that. But I was fiddling with myself in class. I learn now. I'm a certified holistic sex educator, by the way. I learned now that it's really normal for kids to self-soothe in that way, and that speaks to how adults tend to self-soothe with masturbation, which you want to talk porn addiction, people who, quote, are addicted to porn or addicted to sex, they're looking for pleasure. They're trying to calm down in their bodies. And people with addictions are doing this in many ways, whether it's with a drug or shopping to get that rush or gambling to get that rush or over-exercising or going on social media. Any behavior can be taken to an unhealthy place. So when I was a kid, I started noticing stuff like, why are girls shamed for getting their periods when half of the population bleeds? I was the kid that would go to the nurse's office 10 times in a month because all my little friends needed a maxi pad and nobody was like, everyone was too shy to ask. I was the kid that like definitely knew that I was, at the time, the word for it would have been bi, but now I know I'm queer. And it's a homophobic culture that we live in. And that stuff can come up later. So as I got older, I've always been interested in deviance. Why do people commit crime? Why do we hurt each other? So I went to school for criminal justice. I got my bachelor's degree in criminology. I wanted to be a detective for a long time. And if you want to be a detective, you have to be a fucking cop. So I actually thought I was going to be a cop for a while. And you know what that means? I went to school with people who wanted to be cops, and I looked around and was like, oh my God, some of you are serial predators, and you're going to be interacting with marginalized populations. So fast forward when the recession hit, one of the ones in our generation, in 2008, 2009, and I was out of a retail job. I had been in college for 2 years pursuing my degree. I had just moved to Portland. I could not get hired anywhere, even having worked like retail up the ass, respectable management jobs, even, you know, Hot Topic, Spencer's, whatever, you name it. I had done it. I worked in a pharmacy, but there were strip clubs everywhere. And everyone's like, you're pretty and you're nimble. You could make money doing this. I had always heard about the horrors of the sex industry. And so I was scared. And so I researched the clubs. I told myself, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks. And if I can't get a job in a conventional manner, I'm going to audition somewhere. Guess what happened? So I ended up auditioning to the club that seemed the least intimidating. I have the privilege to do these things because I have internet and transportation to look this stuff up. Again, how privilege comes up. I auditioned. I fell in love with the job. I made $7 the first time I ever danced. And I was so thrilled because I'd been told I was cute by creepy old men since I'm 12 years old. But this was the first time I could monetize it. Oh yeah, first time I know that I was leered at.
Wow, 7 years old?
Wow. Yeah.
No, I was 12. My sister was
12. Okay.
We were walking the dog in our neighborhood and a car full of adult men rolled by, and it was a red fucking Camry, and I still remember it because it was the late 90s. And there was like 3 or 4 of them in the car, and they rolled down the windows and they said some dumb shit. And I was scared. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. My sister went off. My 9-year-old sister went over, started cursing, and like kicked the car, and oh my God, we're lucky they just drove away.
Yeah.
You know, but like, I know what it's like being in high school and playing softball on the field and you're 15, but like cars will drive by and adult men will shout stuff at you. Like, this is the culture in which we live. So as an adult, how can I, in a pinch, monetize it and try to navigate this safely? So I get real worked up when I talk about this shit. So I thought maybe I'd do stripping for 6 months, you know, until the economy improved or whatever. I fell in love with it. I realized that people were telling me some of their deepest secrets. I realized that I was learning about culture as a whole and how they expect things from people or want to blow off steam on people. I realized how and why, you know, if a sex worker, AKA a prostitute, is raped, why would she report that if her job that she does is illegal? So this is why people target sex workers for violence. And I realized this when I was a sex worker, and I realized that people were saying to me that they were literally taking it out on me because they could. Like I one time this party group of like young 20 something, I was already 30 at this point. They came in and he comes up to me and tries to like pinch my nipples straight out. I'm like, excuse me. And his lady friend's like, don't do that to her. And he says, she's a stripper, she likes it. So raised exactly to look at these women as expendable. So my work has basically been, I see the value in consensual adult pleasure, touch, and conversation and companionship. So how do we make it the safest, most consensual for everybody? And this improves, like, what are the venues like? What are the hiring practices? Is there internalized racism in the hiring practices? Are people able to get paid in an amount that they agree upon? Are people allowed to work as much as they feel comfortable, or do they have to stay later or fear being punished? All of these things I'm mentioning, if you take them out of a sexual context, they still apply to what should be basic workers' rights. Like, if you feel uncomfortable, you should be able to not serve that person. Or if you agree to work 40 hours, you should be able to only work 40 and not be held for 50, or maybe the boss won't book you the next week, right? So here I am today. I'm gonna drink my water real quick.
I can see you're very passionate about everything.
So much. Yeah, so some of the work that I have done, I have been a nude internet model for 15 years. I was first published in 2005. This was before I auditioned to be a stripper.
Cam Soda, right?
Pardon?
Cam Soda, right?
No, that was in the last few years. So
Okay.
I will say, even though I had my straight people jobs, my conservative jobs, I was still like a person who was really interested in sex and liked sexuality. So I was doing secret nude modeling. And then when I dove into being a stripper, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this public persona because I believe in this stuff and I want to be vocal about it and use my media potential to bring the stories of other people who can't speak up because they'll get outed, or like they're not safe in their relationships or their communities to do so. So I have been, so fully nude on the internet, a fully nude stripper for 11 years until the pandemic. I have done some escorting, which means sex for money. I haven't had a client since March, which was before we really knew how serious the pandemic was. So I've, again, had the privilege to not have to put myself at risk in those ways for like transmitting. I've done webcam. I make and sell my own porn. I have sold fetish stuff through the mail. I sext. I will do phone calls. I will do chats. I had a guy ask if I would fart in a jar and mail it.
What?
I didn't do that though, and now I kind of wish I did.
You got to charge him extra for that.
You know what? I feel like, okay, so here's the thing. People always think there's a lot of money in sex work. There's potential for money in sex work, but like one of the biggest misconceptions is that people are all making bank if they're doing it. And that's so not the case, because after all the middlemen you have to pay for, like platforms that become predatory or managers that become predatory, the laws make it specifically very difficult for us to operate independently. And they do it on purpose to try to stamp out the industry. So, and that's stuff that we could always talk about as well. So I've done all kinds of sex work. And then I started working as a lobbyist in Oregon to improve workplace industries for people. We created a hotline in 2015 that was supposed to be funded so that people with workplace grievances who were in the Oregon live entertainment category, which meant not necessarily sexually relevant, but if you fill out a 1099 to do your taxes, or you like are looking for gigs, whether you're working as a comedian or a singer or a stripper or a naked fire dancer, you could call and say like, oh, this venue was creepy, or it was dirty, or how do I file my taxes if I can't ask my parents because I can't tell them what I do. It was for those types of reasons that it was created, but then budget cuts killed it pretty quickly, like the following year later. So that was very unfortunate. So then otherwise, I've just been a writer and a podcaster to share what I've learned in my time in the sex industries. Also, I worked as a facilitator for therapy groups led by licensed counselors and therapists for sex workers of all different types of work and genders and ages and backgrounds. So really hearing from other people about what comes up for them has been a huge part of my work. So I'm on social media at Stripper Writer on Instagram still. My website is Stripper Writer. My Twitter handle is my name, Elle Stanger, ELLESTANGER. And yeah, do you have any questions, guys? You just kind of let me
Yeah. So I know you say you did escorting for a little bit. So like how do you position yourself to be like, is it like, to me I feel like that's dangerous. Like that's why most girls get pimps, right? If I'm not correct, right?
So you have to look at the history. There's a great book, I have it right here. Actually, I was looking at it earlier, but it's called Sex and History by Ray Tannehill. So since capitalism has existed, whether it was 2,000 years ago and it was in Rome and they were trading for salt, or 500 years ago in Europe and it was under the Catholic Church, there have been multiple instances where houses of worship or society have allowed prostitution as long as they could tax or regulate it. This was very common until the last about 150 years, and that has to do a lot with Puritanism and kind of a reworking of how they were going to present their ideals to people in a palatable way. So the reason people get pimps is, let me tell you what trafficking looks like. I have in my notes at one point, oh good, I didn't lose you, that in the episode, it was probably about the 40-minute mark, one of you fellas asked Ben, guests that you had from Exodus Cry, what trafficking victims were like, who was most at risk. And the answer he gave was vague and incorrect, but the answer I will give is it's minors, like underage people who are runaways from abusive house lives, either intergenerational poverty, like what you see in the Appalachians, where people have been selling their kids for meth for the last decade. You're seeing it in rural Oregon, where that's happening as well, where you have things like underage teenagers, 16, whatever, being forced to work as dancers in like the uncle's bar and the family keeping the money. So a lot of it is due to domestic violence and paternalism and abusive guardians, which is something that's really difficult to legislate around. And we don't have a lot of resources for reporting stuff like that. Runaways in general, if you are a kid who's at the mall and your parents are shitty and you don't want to go home because they might beat you, but a 25-year-old's like, hey, I'll give you a place to stay. You can party, do whatever drugs you want. I don't give a shit if you go to school, but like you might need to do some jobs for me. Those jobs are going to be sex for drugs or money and you get hooked. That happens a lot. Immigrants are very, very at risk because these are the people who could not tell you on a map where they are in the world, but they paid a coyote to send them over from wherever the hell. The Philippines is really common. A lot of the maids that work in the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia from the Philippines, are frequently used as sex slaves. And there's nothing they can do because they signed all documentation, and all of this is very defined by red tape and bureaucracy. So there's not a lot of advocates for people in these positions. Do you remember when the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, did you follow football? He got busted at
in West Palm in Florida.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that facility, the women who were working there were all of Asian. I don't remember the country, but they were all Asian. They were hardly English speaking. They were middle-aged or older, but they were all living there or working there extremely long shifts and sleeping in cots in the back. And they weren't keeping, much of their money. So where would women in that position go who are trying to make money to send back to their families who are living in other types of poverty? Who do they contact for help? Then when they get busted by the sting, the police treated them like criminals. And that means interrogating them for up to 10 hours a day without offering food or water or contact. So our culture does this all the time, where we continue to endanger people who work sex for multiple reasons under capitalism. We don't give them places to report. We don't offer, even hiring often sometimes if someone's done sex work in the first place, because what do we see commonly in the media is it'll come up like, oh, teacher made porn 10 years ago and another parent found it and posted all over the school, so now she's fired. How do you even expect sex workers to exist in the regular world when we're damned if we ever engage at all, no matter the circumstances? What else is coming up for you?
So since we're on the topic with Benji, we might as well go all into that topic right now.
And we love it.
So one thing that I seen that happened was for Pornhub was Mastercard and Visa stop allowing their cards to be used on Pornhub now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I seen Benji post something about that, so that's why I was that's where I got it from. So I was like, oh wow. Now if you go on Pornhub, all you see is crypto. Like, what is it, Bitcoin now, cryptocurrency?
So I am continually frustrated and appalled by the blatant disregard for facts and reality that Exodus Cry, Lila Micklethwait, and Ben have demonstrated over time. Lila has never gotten back to me and then blocked me and deleted my comments when I asked why they were posting misinformation on their page. This was about a year and a half ago when I noticed this stuff.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So they're funded by anti-porn people, such as, another example, if you look up the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, they're often cited as an advocacy organization. They changed their name. They were originally founded as Morality in Media, which was a church-based group in 1962, and they started putting anti-porn shit and Bibles on people's doorsteps. So when you go on their website, they specifically say the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which sounds like a great name, but they gave it to themselves. They equate sexting with abuse and pornography with rape outright, which does a huge disservice to people like me, who obviously can tell you that's not the case. And people do make money for engaging sexually in a way that they're comfortable and feels, benefits them. Everything in this fucking house, sex work paid for, because I'm doing it for 11 years and it hasn't been easy and it's not for everyone. But there's no way in hell I'm going to let a civilian like Benji, who's never done the work, tell me what I need. And quite honestly, nobody who's ever done the work should tell workers what they need to keep them safe, because I see two Black men here. And can you imagine if only white people were making the rules on what would make you safe? Or if men were making the rules on what makes women safe?
Yeah, so when he was talking about all that, trying to shut down Pornhub, my whole thing was I get where he's coming from. If as far as young girls being I guess trafficked through like you said, from like different country, immigrant coming down here, and then their video is on Pornhub and they can't take it down, so now they're traumatized by it because can you imagine going to get a job and they type your name up or they see a video of you, and how can you like live with that, or whatever they're going through the process. I could see how they can get traumatized by that. And also I didn't, to be honest, if you was to ask me Mastercard and Visa was going to stop using or taking their stuff off of Pornhub 2 months ago, I'd have been like, nah, that's not possible.
Yeah, so I really thank you for bringing up, give me all the hard questions because I'm so ready for them. So let's acknowledge that any media platform that exists will be used by people with nefarious purposes, whether it is the internet or a book. There's books that tell you how to build bombs that you can kill people with. Messenger Raven, anything that can be transmitted by humans will be used in inappropriate, harmful ways. Facebook is one of the largest hosts of child sexual abuse material. They, by their own admission, documented 84 million instances of it on their website since 2018. Facebook had 118 in the last year. 118, not 84 million, not 118 million, 118. They had 13 million videos on there. So yes, have those videos appear? Absolutely. Why? Because people will do things like maybe what they did to my friend, where they conned her into giving a picture of her ID because she thought it was for another verification. They used her ID to create a fake Twitter and stole her other materials. So now it's catfishing clients, and someone else is making money off of her images. She has appealed to Twitter about this. So this shit happens. So if you want porn to exist, you definitely want it to be consensual. Like, I know clients who come to me. I have men that, all genders, mostly men, because we live in a primarily like heterosexual space, but primarily men who are like, I just want someone to hug me or touch my penis because it's been so long, or, like tell me I'm sexy or whatever. Where do I go to know that no one's being exploited? Like, how do I feel comfortable? But also, I don't want to be arrested and then put in the newspaper like a sex offender. So
they charged you for that? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, that's.
Oh, pardon? No, I've never been arrested. That's why. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. No, I didn't know they charge you as an offender.
So if you look up prostitution stings, a lot of times in states like Ohio or Florida, a lot of the East Coast, but around the Bible Belt, where they're particularly more of a punishment attitude towards sexual deviation from marriage, what they will do is say something like sex trafficking ring exposed. But then if you read the documents of the article, these men were engaging with other adults. So there were no minors involved. So there are legal terms that are specifically being abused. I interviewed Detective Brendan McGuire of Portland Police Sex Crimes Unit a few years ago. And I have a wonderful quote from him somewhere where he says there is a common attempt in the media to conflate, so like use them as the same thing between prostitution and trafficking. So like, I have engaged in prostitution. I have not been a survivor or a victim of trafficking. And I could tell that like Benji doesn't understand the difference, because in the first example he uses about the woman, Holly, who She was young. She was 14. She fell into a domestic relationship with an older man who said, hey, I need you to start working for me. Okay, so that responsibility is on him. It's not on her. But he said that she was being prostituted. He's already obviously doesn't understand what prostitution is. In his mind, anybody engaging in prostitution is a victim. This is how actual victims don't get their needs met, when you confuse the issue and you start flagging women in lingerie photos they've uploaded themselves. You know, like all of the stuff that's getting flagged on social media right now is making it harder to find real victims and survivors of trafficking or who've had their media stolen. That is why the Department of Justice, when in that episode, he mentioned that one of their opponents was the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice specifically looked at a set of bills a couple of years ago before they passed. They were called FOSTA and SESTA. They are the reason why the internet platforms are removing adult media the way they are these days. But they said, please don't pass these bills. The Department of Justice said, on first review, do not pass these bills. It will hamstring innovation and make trafficking harder to address. But they passed them anyway because people like to feel good about passing a bill called Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act and Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act. Yeah, I'm so bummed by the whole inability to hear from people who are being so hurt by what's going on. So when I created my Pornhub account a year ago, I have one video on there, okay? It's barely sexual. It's a balloon popping video for some people. Isn't that funny?
I was gonna ask you about that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we was about to ask you about that. Yeah, what are you so when you have one video on Pornhub, so do you call yourself a porn star? Like star because what is it?
I sell porn directly from people who email me who are like, hey, I listen to your podcast and I want to buy your content, or like I follow you on Twitter and I think you're cute, whatever. Or I saw that presentation and I know you make porn. So I ask of them to send me proof of their ID with their name, date of birth, and then the state number visible. And I check that I'm selling, interacting with an adult, it matches the email. And then they send me a payment in a way that I can't mention because it's fucking criminalized. And then I send them the material and it works really nicely. Is that for everyone? No, not everyone has their own private laptop where they can store their files. I also make live porn. That's on Cam Soda when I web stream, and then it stores some of the clips that people can buy after that.
Can somebody shadow screen? Like, can somebody while they're...
People can do that. Some sites have technology that blocks it, but people can do that. There was a question. Oh, that's right. So it just, when you take down all the pornography, porn creators and their families are immediately poorer, and clients can't access consensually made pornography, but criminals will always upload stolen materials. So if you take down Pornhub, and you're right, a few months ago, I didn't think this would happen, but if they take that down, it's a really bad precedent-setting move for any website that would knowingly host consensual adult content. And if it doesn't exist anywhere, where do we have positive examples of pleasure and excitement and fantasy if we keep criminalizing them? Oh yeah, but to make an account, he said that he's so lying. He's like, you don't need any verification to upload. That's fucking baloney, because I needed my social security number, my state ID, and my face next to it, and then a few-day waiting period.
To upload a video on Pornhub?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think, what's her name? Natasha Dream, or was it Sherry DeVille? We had those two people on our they're actual porn stars. One of them said that nowadays they're starting to get better with Pornhub, so they're trying to verify more things.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest and realistic, like I always am. And Pornhub, when they started, they were just as shitty as any other upload site because it was primarily just a hosting platform where anyone could upload. I don't know the history of like who's guiding their ethics and their ownership board, but I've watched them as someone who has engaged with the porn industry now for over a decade. I've watched them improve their policies, add really inclusive, informative, helpful sex education resources for everybody, because that was another part of their thing. They stated that they knowingly provide fantasy material, but they wanted to be responsible and enforce or reinforce media literacy. Could they do more? Absolutely. But the payment processors thing you brought up at the beginning is another just like I'm seeing people on Twitter and I'm hearing from my friends, they're depressed, they're not eating, they're broke, they're wondering what their next move is going to be because they, maybe it was $200 or $2,000 a month and that's gone. Now what do they do? So the reason, to a long time question you asked, the reason more people go to pimps is when they cannot advertise for themselves or get paid themselves. So then somebody comes along and says, I can find you work, but I'm going to take a percentage. And the less power you have to negotiate, that's how you lose more and more power.
You could be like Clark. Clark is into Bitcoin. You can make money off of Bitcoin.
A lot of people, I have a Bitcoin. I'm up like $100. A lot of people use Bitcoin. Cash is still king until that Visa, Mastercard.
That's a big thing as far as with the crypto, and like I don't want to say what could possibly it could be used for other than the cards. Yeah. So yeah, it can go full circle. But anyways, if you get the hint, but yeah, if you with that, I know you do chem soda. Have you thought about doing like an OnlyFans or like how like the Instagram quote unquote models do? And
yeah. So I've been following Instagram since it started, or I'm sorry, I've been following OnlyFans since they started, and I'm not interested because they do sometimes their users will experience delays in payment, like 6 months delays in payments or no.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Right. And then what I've also noticed, being someone who's been published nude on the internet for 15 years, almost 16 next year, that platforms come and go. And so this one could very much be gone in a year or two, especially with the tumultuous time we've had for a few different reasons. So I'm just not interested because I have too many other platforms to manage, like I don't really want to make one more. This shit is stressful. Content is hard.
Yeah. I agree. Instagram could go, Facebook, everything. It's best to have just your own little website where you can bring all the traffic to.
Yeah.
And like I'm sorry, I don't like interrupting. That's the one thing I don't like. Like, okay, so like you have a good following like on Instagram.
Yeah, I think 140,000 at the moment.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Breeze right through that.
Well, I was going to ask you, you have so many followers. Do you have anybody that wants to sponsor you so you can get paid off of, like, it could be sex toys or like, like if you sell a certain amount,
Yeah, no, I definitely, so I recognize the value in, I have a shitload of expertise. Like I've worked 4 years selling sex toys and everything else that I mentioned before, and probably stuff I forgot. So I recognize that I'm a valuable resource, and I do have affiliates that I will get paid to promote like a sex education program or like a toy. But then I also, if I see a group or an organization or product that like you recognize that's good and you want to support them, then I'll do freebies as well. I do not do that shout out for shout out shit because I'm not going to co-sign anybody else's beliefs or activities without knowing them. So that's my transparency there. I have to say, like, you guys are lovely and thank you for hosting me here, but it was like listening to the episode that I listened to as much that I did, and I told you I got about 45, 50 minutes. It was really hard and it was really frustrating, and I was getting like full body shake because people like Ben and Ben himself do so much harm to so many people, and that is by reinforcing that Christian thinly veiled purity shit that comes from ideas of like ownership of women's bodies and toxic monogamy. Because I agree, some of the things he said, I was like, yeah, buddy, you're halfway there. Sex is beautiful. Bodies are beautiful. You can experience like ecstasy, pleasure, joy, happiness, play, but you can do that with multiple people. I enjoy and experience some happy, lovely things with some of my clients. If I don't, it's okay because I'm not there for that. I'm there to make money. I'm there to make them feel good. But I also have multiple partners. So I don't expect like my one boyfriend that I've had for 4 years to be my all and everything. And I also know I'm not that for him. So that's not necessarily for everyone. Monogamy is great for some people, but toxic monogamy is the idea that your body is mine and I do not want to share you with anybody else. Or to go a step further, if you have ever done anything that I disagree with, I get to punish you for it and make you feel bad for it.
I want to talk about that. And before we hop back in with the Benji thing, too, because I know when you emailed me, I was like, I can feel how you felt when you was watching that episode. I was like, ah, man. But so you have a boyfriend or a husband right now, or what is it?
So yeah, so I have a 4-year nesting mate boyfriend. He is 3 years younger than me. He's a nice man. I have dated a couple other people and had sex with other people in that time, and then he has done as well.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Is he allowed to do that, or like, because it's kind of like I was just talking to Clark when we interviewed the last porn star we had, and I was like, she looks lovely, but I don't know if I could date a porn star. Like, just me knowing that she's going to work and then another guy's plowing her and then come back home and then she expects me to just sit there and just be a lovely husband. Me personally, it's like, if you're allowed to do that, I should be allowed to do that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. People should find situations that they feel comfortable in, no matter what that is. And part of that, I've had people ask me before, like, how do I feel about people who say, like, I couldn't date a sex worker? And I say, like, good for you on knowing that, because I know that I could not date a soldier. Like, just, I don't want to have you be away for a year or like whatever. Like knowing your limitations is good. I am a poly person, but that also means if boyfriend goes and has a date, I personally know that I am not going to be aroused by the smell of the other person. I'm kind of a germaphobe anyway. So we have an agreement that like, just like shower between, before I see you. So I'm not gonna like put my cummy pussy in his face and be like, hey, remember all those dudes I'm fucking,
Yeah.
So people have issue with like their partner's cleanliness or like, oh, what if you stretch out her pussy or whatever, which as a sex educator, I know that's a fear. Some men are I ain't
gonna lie. I used to hear that in high school, but as I got older, that's nothing to me nowadays. But yeah.
So the more sex you have, healthy sex, the stronger your muscles will be. That includes your kegels and your pubococcygeal muscle. And so slutty pussies are strong pussies, and same with dicks. But yeah, so people can find their comforts, and that's totally fine if you wouldn't want to date a sex worker. I wouldn't want to date someone who wouldn't want to date a sex worker. I want to date someone who like can hear about my work or wants to help me with my work. That's fun for me. Definitely.
So let me say this. I was talking to someone earlier about this. I think I could date a sex worker, but I don't know if I could marry one.
Okay.
Just like the thrill, just the thrill of the experience, just to see, because I'm a very curious person, so I like to just test things out and see how it is, and if it's for me, it's not. I'm very curious. But aren't you afraid that he might catch feelings for another girl, or you might catch feelings for another guy? Because sometimes when you having sex with somebody, sometimes you can just do it just do it. But if you're doing it multiple times, you start to get to know the person. Sometimes you can catch feelings.
Yeah, that's definitely something. People are always so interested to talk about poly stuff. And really what I say to folks is like, imagine what kind of relationships you would like to have. What does that look like in your mind? Like, what would you create for yourself? Does that include like just flirting with other people with or in front of your partner and that being fun or whatever? So I'm sorry, I'm stoned and I totally forgot your question. Oh yeah, what if somebody catches feelings?
Yeah.
Well, we have feelings like boyfriend knows that a past flame of mine, who I might see again sometime because I haven't seen him in 6 months because of pandemic, but like he knows that he and this old flame, like we still say I love you to each other every once in a while. Like if something significant happens, we have love for each other. I know that my boyfriend has a crush on this Colombian anarchist who just brought coffee because they're visiting. And I was like, ooh, are you going to hang out? I get excited about shit like that. So that's the word compersion comes up where you're like excited for your partner's excitement. And also liking or respecting the person or the idea of the other person is also really important. Because I wouldn't want my partner to be dating people that like I think is going to treat them bad, and that's a whole other world of things to navigate.
That's a lot of energy though, for you guys to be dealing with different personalities.
That's why
for me, that's too much.
We haven't done it in the last 6-8 months now. He hasn't dated. He's got 3 fucking jobs. I haven't fucked anybody else. It's a pandemic. He hasn't fucked anybody else. Like, I'm like,
y'all, you guys live together, right? Or no?
Yeah. Like, at least we have each other, but dating is a joke. We're not doing that right now. I said to him last week, I was like, oh, babe, one day the sex clubs will happen again.
That's crazy. Are you guys living together or are you guys living separate homes?
We live together. So I have an 8-year-old that I co-parent. So it was important to me that they get to know each other slowly, and I just not move this relative stranger in. So we, except for one weekend when we got snowed in and he stayed here for 2 days after we'd been dating for like 4 months, that went well. And then a year later, he moved in after we had started dating. And then he lived here for about a couple years. He had to move out for work, which was strange because for a lot of people, when someone moves out, you're breaking up. So a lot of our friends were really confused. And then he moved back in because work changed again and he's here again. So we've been a constant to each other. But who has the 3-year-old? One of you has a 3-year-old daughter.
I do.
Clark, yeah. Okay, she's doing her research.
Yeah.
I told you I listened. I wanted to bring this up because the body image stuff you guys were talking about is really important. So the thing that Ben said about talking to a man therapist who said, quote, "I've never met a woman who believes she's beautiful." That seems really, really significant when you remember that you're talking to a person who specifically deals with people who are dealing with emotional trauma and issues and insecurities. And that would be like talking to a mechanic and a mechanic saying, "I've never met a car that ran perfectly," because no shit, you're in the behavior of working on things. Like you're in the trade of working on people doing their self-work. So there are women who know they're beautiful, feel they're beautiful, express they're beautiful, get shamed for being told they're beautiful. There's this thing in leftist, like activist circles that I've started seeing where folks are like, and this was a Black woman activist feminist who said, and I wish I could remember her name, but I just found her. She's like, "I'm not going to apologize for being a good educator or for being funny. I'm not going to do performative self-hating because society wants me to do that to appear humble."
Yeah, I know exactly.
You know what I mean? And like, that's when it comes to body concern and like issues for your daughter, if you wonder how to model healthy behavior for your kids about their bodies, I will say, as a person who grew up as a little girl, I had a dad who would nitpick and critique and talk shit on women's bodies and faces and voices on TV, on radio, if he disagreed with them. And I had a mother, and I've talked to my parents about these issues. We've been very forthright and reflective. But I had a mother who still to this day, she's a fucking dancer. She can do a plank for 10 minutes. She's ripped as fuck, right? She's 60 years old. Crazy bitch. So I talked to my mother and she still does this thing where she'll like, growing up, she'd be like, "Oh, my saggy boobs," or "Oh, my crazy hair," or "Oh, my big nose." Don't do that shit in front of your kids. Like, don't talk about your own body stuff you don't like in front of your kids, and don't talk about other people's body shit in front of your kids, because your kids are going to internalize that. And that's what they're going to feel like. You know, they're going to be the people on Twitter who are like, "I don't like that woman's opinion, so she's fucking ugly," or whatever. Not saying that women don't do this about men too. Like, I had a problem with people being like, "Oh, Donald Trump has small hands, so he probably has a small dick." And I'm like, so a small dick. People with small dicks are chill too. Let's talk about his shitty ideas, not what his dick might look like, you know? Like, that's not fair to anybody. So culture is toxic in a lot of ways. We can model good behavior by saying stuff like, "I really like my makeup today," you know, or like, "Damn, I feel really strong. I appreciate my knees right now for how much they can like squat," or whatever. Your kids will internalize that shit.
Definitely.
And again,
kids copy. They see everything they see, they copy pretty much. So you put out negative energy, they're gonna put out that negative energy too. That's why I try to put positivity all the time. Like, I try to be around positivity and put out positivity, not just for my kid, but just for me too, for my day. So when I wake up in the morning, I can have a good day.
Good. Yeah, the world needs that.
Exactly.
Harm reduction.
Yeah, especially with my daughter, I'm very careful with that. Like, and I don't even talk about people like that. You know, I never say, "Oh, that person's like this and that," and to have my daughter hear me, you know. And I always give her confidence. I give her compliments to, you know, how beautiful she looks. You know what I'm saying? She's 3, but she understands she's like up there. I feel, you know. Everybody says she's sharp, so I always tell her, and I always show her, like, you know, yeah, you can do it. Let's do it, and I'll help you, and I'll show you, and then she does it, you know. And I'm always, you know, there to show her how to do it, you know, like better, like how to better herself that way, physically and like mentally too. So
yeah, that's important. Yeah, the smartness thing is really important.
Yeah, people that sit there and talk nonsense, like all that negativity stuff, usually have not going for themselves. So
yeah,
when I hear that, I just be like, it's good to laugh sometimes, like Twitter memes and stuff like that. Like, oh, okay, that was funny. But if you really want to get down to the root to the problem, their life is not going too good.
Something else I wanted to bring up, because you said you guys go hard and you go deep and you go in, right? So when I was listening to okay, so first of all, when Ben said the first sex scene he ever saw was the rape scene in the movie The Accused, right? So this is a famous scene. I've never seen it. Have you guys watched this movie?
To be honest, no, I didn't see it. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I saw it, I didn't see it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I've not seen it either. The reason it perked up my ears is, so The Accused scene, the rape scene, the movie is based on an underage girl who was gang raped in a bar by a few different adult men, and then went through a really, I think, like public humiliating trial and experience and shit afterwards. Anybody, please correct me if I'm wrong. But what I know specifically about that scene is that a feminist writer, Inga Muscio, in her book Cunt, which I read when I was like 14, totally radicalized me. She pointed out that this rape scene of what is a underage person was very sexualized by the mainstream media who made it, like showing cleavage and breasts and like sucking noises and like ambiguous moaning. So the problem with the scene, and the scene has been cited as how rape is sexualized in mainstream culture. So poor 11-year-old Benjamin saw this. No shit. Right?
Ella not playing. She came prepared. She's going in.
I'm going fucking in. So poor Buddy sees this scene, no fucking context to it. And then what happens next? So what I have noticed has come up for him when he's talking about his friend Holly Smith, what he said over and over again, and I was pacing my house, like talking to myself and talking back to you guys on the podcast, was he's like, I just kept imagining Holly there, her first night, scantily clad in heels. Anyone could have just come up and taken her. She was all alone, just 14. And I'm like, you're having a sexual fantasy right now. This is a harsh accusation, but like a lot of the tie-ins between religiosity and shame is people who grow up in the church are exposed to propaganda that tells you if you feel sexual urges, unless they are directed at the person you're married at and maybe for the purpose of having kids, they're wrong. So it is very common to see.
Yeah, that's what I was taught. That's when I was in church, and they said just the thought of it is bad.
So that's a whole separate thing. I recommend you look up Bell Hook's Ain't I a Woman book. It's really short. It was written a couple decades ago, but she speaks specifically, she's a Black woman writer who speaks specifically to how it was part of white ownership to control the breeding and the purity of Black people, not just through slavery and after, I mean, Black women were told before slavery ended that if they could have 10 or more children, they could earn their freedom. And if those children were mixed, like half white, AKA known as mulatto, they could even get more money. So they were turned into breeding machines and sometimes refused their freedom or died in the process anyway. And then when you had people that were freed, a way that folks could adapt to the white dominant culture was by showing how pure they were by mimicking the white Victorian purity that was advertised as ideal. So it's always been about controlling youth, with like fighting against rock and roll music or R&B or anything that would hint at sexuality. Deep shit, right?
That book sounds interesting. I'm about to take a look at that.
So when I heard that part where you were like, oh, none of that music related to the devil, that was ingrained in them to reinforce certain types of behavior and beliefs. You know, you should only have a family, or you should only have sex if you're going to have a family and raise children that can become valuable workers. This is a byproduct of capitalism. So, and then on cosmetic surgery, you guys are so silly, don't you know? Lots of cultures for thousands of years have done body mods, whether it was like earlobe stretching, lip stretching, neck stretching, foot binding in China.
Yes, I see.
Right. So I've had a boob job. I listen to the Botox segment, and I've never had Botox because I use my face a lot when I talk and I don't want to like freeze my expressions. But my co-host John on my last podcast, he actually got Botox a couple places in his face because he has a nervous twitch. And when he would start twitching in public, it triggered his panic attacks. So he's a rich white kid where he could afford, his dad works for like one of the biggest tech industries in the world. It's insane. He has no power, by the way. I'm just like, tell your dad I said hi and like to change their policies. But he got Botox to kill the nerves so that he would stop having panic attacks. So there's good reasons for cosmetic surgery, you know, and people have been doing it a long time. I just want to make sure we don't shame folks who get that. Because like anything else, yes, you can overdo it, you know?
Yeah, that's one thing. It's like, you know, when will it end, you know? But then again, it's like, it's their body, but it's like, dang, you don't want them to, you know, I don't know how you don't want to control them, but it's like, you know, they look good already. And it's like, man, they're going further and further and further. I don't want to say it, but Little Kim, when you see her from back in the day, she didn't need any surgery at all, like nothing at all. And I'm like, man, it's crazy, but it happens.
That's when you have people around you that won't say no to you. I told boyfriend, I was like, let me know if any of this gets crazy, because I would get my lips injected when I could. I'm like, let me know if I start like doing like euphoria, not like seeing reality for what it is.
What was your thoughts? Because I got a couple topics that he went through. So we actually went through a topic. Do you remember the beauty scanner topic we talked about?
Beauty scanner. I do not.
Let me see if I can get that and play it.
But yeah, you like, Elle, you seem like a sapiosexual. Like
I have it tattooed on my hands.
Ah, that's crazy. I didn't even know. I'm looking at it too. I kept looking at your. That's cool. That's cool.
You see it?
Oh, okay. See, yeah, you seem like that. I was like, I see. I couldn't see. Yeah, that's cool.
That makes me so happy. Thanks for validating me, Mitch.
You're welcome. There, because I'm like, you seem like it because you're intelligent. So like, I like having those type of, you know. You're welcome.
Yeah. No, thank you. I just in case we run out of time, I just want to say about porn and erotica, like a lot of the anti-porn people will tell you that this is like a new crisis with sexual imagery everywhere. And yes and no, because like we've already talked about, context is appropriate. You know, people understanding that what they're consuming is not representative of real life is important. People understanding that it's fantasy made by professionals is important. But also like churches and houses of worship and buildings have featured sexual fantasy art, like people fucking snakes and goat people for thousands of years. It's not, you know, it's just not.
That's so true, because they were exposing when people went to Europe, they saw a whole bunch of statues of little kids, you know, being sodomized by like the older, like the pastor, like, or the deacon of the church or whoever, you know, that's giving a sermon. And it's crazy. I was like, wow. But you just walk past it and be like, oh, it's history. But you're not like, not you, but those people that are there are not looking closely, and it's there right in front of everybody. And yeah, it's crazy.
There's a lot of stuff that I think needs to be changed. There's a lot of slave statues that are still up out right now to this day. Like there's a lot of things, and if you look at it, you walk people live there and they won't even notice it themselves, but they've been living in that city or state. That's the crazy part about it. Oh, it's history, but you don't even know your own history.
Right. That's a big part of it. That's what kept coming up for me with the Ben interview, is like he talked about like all the evils of sex industry, but like the West Coast where he grew up, Southern California where I grew up, like that area only settled because when the gold strike happened, women from the East Coast realized that hordes of men were moving out there. And so they went out to restart their lives and make money working as prostitutes. That's why the brothels and the saloons and the businesses ended up thriving and building. The men wouldn't have stuck around. There's a good history.com segment on this, but or like media, VHS took off over Betamax, if you remember that at all, because more porn industry was shooting on VHS. So that's what more people started buying. Blu-ray, the one that got more popular, Blu-ray over HD, more porn people were using it for that. Civil War era woodcuts of maidens could be purchased for a few cents to soldiers. And that was erotica. That was one of the first types of print available to some people. So a lot of media is led by sexuality and nudity and pleasure art because it's important. So like, how do we create it responsibly and ethically and take feedback from the people who are working in it? Because just the last thing I want to say, when I turned it off is when talking about hearing from opponents to his actions, like hearing from sex workers, Ben said, I just have to tune it out. And that's what he's been doing. So anybody
Elle, you funny, man. You funny.
okay.
I have one more. I have actually two questions before we end it. The question I wanted to ask was, since you have a daughter, so if your daughter was to come to you and say, when she was old enough, like 22, 23, and says, Mom, I want to join the porn industry, what would you say? What would you do?
I would say you came to the right person. I can tell you like some of the things that helped me. I can get you connected with the right people and come to me with your questions. Because I have legit had a conversation with a man in a strip club. The most recent time was about 1.5 years ago, and I saw him sitting at the stage and I heard him say, my daughter will never do that. As my coworker's doing this amazing like nude spin and all he's like, my daughter will never do that, he says to his friend. I heard him at the back of the room. He comes up, he tries to say something douchey to me for free. And I was like, hey, you don't know what your daughter will or won't do. But like, if you feel weird about strippers, why are you in here? Why are you engaging?
So you feel like men do a lot of contradicting?
People do it all the time. It's like, oh, it's the same shit as like, well, my son will never be gay or my kid will never be trans. You don't know that.
That's true.
That's true. So yeah, that guy got so pissed and he's like, well, what if your daughter, because he asked me the same thing. He's like, what if your daughter wanted to be a stripper? And I looked him dead ass in the eye and I said, if she's as good at it as I am, I will support her fully. Oh my God, he's so mad. He's like, who the fuck are you?
Okay, let me end it with this question. So what would you tell your younger self? And if you was to go back to the past and talk to your younger self, would you tell your younger self to take the same path? Yeah,
I would have done it a little differently. But no, there's nothing like big coming up for me right now. Like no matter what industry I would have dove into, I would have made some mistakes and met some creeps along the way. But overwhelmingly, I think just kind of learning how to assert my own boundaries and to understand when people are speaking over me or trying to undermine me has been like the biggest tool in navigating a really criminalized, misunderstood series of industries.
Okay. All right. And then if I could set up a interview with like a debate with you and Benji, would you do it?
Hell yeah. Oh my God. He won't agree to it. He won't, but yes. I mean, maybe he will. Like I said, I don't know.
Well, it depends because he has a team where they make sure that they got a good image, like you know what I'm saying, like a good PR team. So if he going to debate, and I'm pretty sure he knows how to handle himself. From me talking to him, he sounds like he knows how to handle himself. So you're right, he probably might not do it because he don't want something to slip or anything like that to happen. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt for me to ask and see what happens. Yeah. Or he might have somebody else come on, or like Lila or something.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for asking.
That would be good because Elle surprised me, and I'm sure that she would surprise him because I didn't think she was doing research like that.
This is my life, baby. These are people's lives we're talking about here. Not his. He's getting clout. He's getting fame. He's getting pats on the back. But these are our lives that are being impacted negatively. So thanks for
I feel like I feel like both of you guys have a point. There should be like some type of middle ground where you guys can come together and like figure out what's best for both worlds, because as you can see, like sex workers, they're workers too. Not gonna lie, I was kind of ignorant to the fact about porn star, prostitute. Like, I know you don't like that word prostitute, so I'm just say sex workers.
Thank you.
But I was kind of like ignorant to it until I started speaking to actual sex workers, and I was like, huh, I kind of get it.
There's a lot more there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more to the story. Like, if you don't actually sit there and talk to one, then you wouldn't really get it. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I know you got to go.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I don't know if Elle, if you saw the there's like a podcast. That's not really a podcast. It's an interview, and the guy is called Soft White Underbelly. Have you ever seen that?
Oh. No, I haven't.
Okay, it's amazing because they go over like a lot of the sex workers and actual sex workers and how their story is and how they came up. Not only that, he talks to the pimps. He talks to people who are on drugs and stuff like that. But
yeah, send me.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Like, they're off the street, like literally, like, or they're still doing it. And
yeah, I'd be interested to see who sponsors it, and I'd be interested to see it. Yeah, I would love to talk to Ben because I want some clarifications on some of the things he's saying that just aren't true.
Yeah. No, right, definitely.
Jump to my next appointment and explain FOSTA to somebody else.
Yeah, I wanted to get deep into that, but we don't got enough time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I wanted to get deep into that. Yeah, I don't think people think that it's only affecting sex work, but if you really go down deep to it, it's affecting everybody. It's going to affect everybody. Yeah,
therapists, anybody. Look, if you use Skype to talk to your lover long distance and you're like having digital sex, it matters because since FOSTA-SESTA passed, Microsoft can spy on you, checking for nudity or obscenity, like they said they've been doing since FOSTA-SESTA passed, looking for pornography, trafficking, obscenity. It's fucking ridiculous. So look up why repeal FOSTA-SESTA.
All right, and then you got a Patreon, so let everybody know where they can find it. It's crazy that it's unsearchable. I was like, what? It's unsearchable.
That's another one of the disadvantages of navigating life as an adult entertainment worker. Yeah, so patreon.com/strange bedfellows. It's 18 and up. You can't search for it on the website because we've agreed to make ourselves unsearchable since we offer 18 and up, even though Patreon built its entire main source of income for a while on pornographers.
So how would you advise everybody to go and support it? Through your website, Instagram, or?
Yeah, find me on stripperwriter.com, and my website's getting a makeover now.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on. Next time we'll go even deeper. This was kind of like a get to know you interview, and let's get it. Cool.
Have a really good, wonderful evening over on your side of the country. Thank you guys.
You too.
Thank you.
For the culture.
For the culture.